There are so many crazy kinds of parasite, and I'm going to explain them all to you from least disturbing to most disturbing. But we have to start with the definition of parasite. Generally speaking, a parasite is a creature that forms a close relationship with a host organism, harming the host in order to benefit themselves. Parasites do not kill their hosts like predators do with prey, because their strategy involves deriving benefits from the host being alive. Now, you may notice that viruses and infectious bacteria meet this description. That's because they do. Parasites do not need to be animals, because parasitism is more of a strategy than a type of organism. That's why pathogens are considered microparasites, and they're a good place to start. When microparasites infect a host's body, they often induce sickness, and they quickly spread throughout host populations through contact, fluid exchange, or by being airborne. They tend to have short generation times, allowing for rapid reproduction and a high enough rate of mutation in order to out-evolve host defenses. Just recently, a microparasite shut down the entire world, so you've probably heard enough about them. Let's move on to bigger things. Ectoparasites are parasites that do not enter inside the host's body, instead they live on the host's external surface. Think ticks, lice, fleas, or bedbugs. Ectoparasites like to feed on the rich, nutritious blood of their hosts by sucking through their skin. They tend to be small enough to latch on unassumingly, and then quickly reproduce until it's too late for the host to get rid of them. Then they use regular contact between hosts to rapidly spread. You may notice that this is pretty similar to the microparasite strategy of spreading. And it is, because it's so simple and effective. In fact, a lot of microparasites use the bites of ectoparasites as a vector to spread themselves. A subgroup of ectoparasites are micropredators. Instead of sticking to one host, they feed on multiple different ones, like mosquitoes, vampire bats, or leeches. We do tend to consider micropredators ectoparasites, because they don't kill their target but do cause them harm. But seeing as they don't really form a close relationship with their host for long, it's hard to say they have a host exactly. But it's not exactly prey either, because prey is a term for an organism that is caught and killed. So micropredators are kind of an in-between of predator and parasite. It will be a continuous theme of this video that definitions are strained when talking about different kinds of parasites, because life is often too complex for simple classifications to fully capture. Okay, now it's time to look inwards and talk endoparasites. Ecto means outside, endo means inside. Tapeworms that steal your nutrients from within your intestines, or rabies that bind to animals' brains and cause them to be feral, or the tongue-eating louse, which cuts off the tongue of a fish and replaces it with itself. Endoparasites are usually what we think about when we discuss parasites, because it's such a broad and popular strategy. And there are so many different kinds of endoparasites, mostly worms, oh my god are there so many worms, that take up residence in different body parts, different hosts, cause different symptoms, and so on. Endoparasites, at least the macro ones, don't just magically appear in your system, nor are they able to just kind of jump onto you like an ectoparasite. So they've evolved numerous ways to sneak into the convention center. Large macroparasites tend to be very small and hard to detect in their larval stages, and only grow once they've been ingested. So cook your food, don't suck your thumb or rub your eyes after touching parasite-infested water, or you may start to feel yourself becoming Jimmy Fallon. By that I mean you'll be a host, because you just picked up an endoparasite. Wash your hands. A lot of endoparasites are hermaphrodites and reproduce with themselves within their host. The host then goes and poops their larvae out, which either seeps into water or gets directly eaten, because a lot of animals eat poop. This is called the fecal-oral route, the ultimate transmission pathway for parasites, going from shit to mouth to shit to mouth. Some parasites regularly go through different intermediate hosts before reaching their primary host. The green-banded broodsac is an endoparasitic flatworm that infects snails as an intermediate host. Once in, they pulsate through the snail's eye stalks, mimicking caterpillars so that birds will notice them and eat the snail. The adult parasite then infects the bird's cloaca as a primary host and releases its eggs into the bird's poop. Kleptoparasites parasitize by stealing from their host. Yes, this is considered parasitism because it harms the target while the parasite receives a benefit and no killing is involved, but it's not like the target is much of a host, so again, the definitions are a little blurry. Hyenas and lions like to bully other carnivores into stealing their kills. Millichid flies will visit spider webs to consume half-eaten bugs and then fly off. Archerfish, which spit long distances to shoot down their prey, will sometimes find that another archerfish has already picked up their kill when they swim over to go get it. A case of intraspecific parasitism, where animals parasitize members of the same species. Now you might be thinking, humans steal from each other all the time. Does that make us intraspecific specific Kleptoparasites? Well, kind of, but also no. Even with the other examples, kleptoparasitism happens opportunistically. Stealing is only a stable strategy when it's less costly than acquiring food for yourself, which changes based on every situation. Kleptoparasitism also becomes a weaker strategy the more often it happens, because others begin to be more vigilant towards it, making it a frequency-dependent trait as well. So I would say that we can engage in kleptoparasitism, but not that we're kleptoparasites. Adelphoparasites are parasites that are closely related to their host species. For example, a species of red algae parasitizes a sister species by growing directly on top of it. When I was exploring the literature, I found that Adelphoparasites were really understudied, which is a shame because learning about how a single species diverged into a parasite and a host can tell us a lot about parasite evolution and speciation. Okay, we've been talking so much about parasites, but did you ever stop to consider that your parasites could have parasites? Hyperparasites are exactly that. They parasitize parasites that are already parasitizing a host. It's parasitism squared, or cubed in the case of the small white butterfly. Their larvae parasitize brassica plants, but are parasitized themselves by the larvae of Cotessia wasps, which are then parasitized by the larvae of Lysibia wasps. The same thing happens to ectoparasitic flatworms, which latch onto a relative of the tongue-eating louse, which latches onto these breams, which has the scientific name boops boops. And I just thought you should know that. Hyperparasites can be useful for controlling the population of primary parasites. This is used for controlling pests in agriculture, but it can also be used in medicine. Bacteriophages are viruses that we use to target bacterial infections, so they're technically our hyperparasites. Okay, I want you to imagine a scenario. You're giving birth to twins, and while you're pushing them out and not the most conscious, somebody slips into the room and sneaks their own baby onto the table. Then when you come to, you find 3 kids and think, oh, I guess I must have had triplets. So you go on to raise the extra kid, assuming that it's yours. This is what brood parasites do. They parasitize another individual's parental investment. This is famous in cuckoo birds, which lay their eggs in the nests of other birds while they aren't there. This bird lays an egg in this bird's nest and has evolved to have their egg mimic the host eggs. The parasitic chick then hatches first and grows faster than all the other chicks, so it can acquire food from the mother, bully the other birds, and eventually evict them from the nest so that they can have all the care themselves. It's up to the host mother to recognize this and eliminate the brood parasite, but it can be surprisingly difficult for them to realize. Here's a Eurasian weed warbler feeding what it thinks is its massive, massive baby. The next type of parasitism is exclusive to eusocial insects, like ants, bees, and termites that have complicated social structures and communication systems. This is what social parasites exploit, not any individual organism, but the superorganism that is the entire colony. I wrote a term paper about social parasites in my 4th year of undergrad and have been obsessed with them ever since. One way of being a social parasite is to use chemical mimicry, releasing communication pheromones to camouflage or influence host behavior. Rove beetles both physically and chemically blend in with ants, even going marching with them and then feeding on them when they have the opportunity. This is what the parasites in the anime Parasite the Maxim do as well. Caterpillars of the large blue butterfly use chemical signals to trick ants into bringing them to their nest. Then they prey on the ant larvae or beg for food, in which case the ant workers will actually go and feed them, making this brood parasitism as well. But no one parasitizes ants better than other ants. Many ant species can run into the lair of another species' colony, kill the queen, and seize control of the colony for themselves. Eventually, the old workers die out, and the colony is entirely replaced by a society of the parasitic species. But other times, the ants from the original colony are forced to continue taking care of the queen and the work of the colony. This is referred to as doulosis, or slave making, and some parasitic species are completely helpless without their slaves. In order to replenish their numbers, they regularly execute slave raids on other host colonies. If there were lizard people that infiltrated our society and are secretly controlling us through a shadow government, they would be doulotic social parasites. There are so many variations and intricacies with social parasites, especially ants, that I don't have time for here. Maybe I'll talk about it in a bonus video on Patreon, or I can just make another video here. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. For now, we have to move on, so let's talk about sex. Parasitic castrators are parasites that either attach to or replace your genitalia. Why? Because you, that's why. Actually, I take that back. No one's gonna fuck you because your dick is a worm now. Parasitic castrators greatly harm or destroy their host's ability to reproduce. Saculina barnacles attach to crab meat and physically obstruct their ability to reproduce. It also causes hormonal changes to the crab. Infected male crabs begin to develop female secondary sex characteristics, a widened abdomen among other things. Funnily enough, many species of barnacle are parasitically castrated by a crustacean. The isopod Hemioniscus balani castrates hermaphroditic barnacles, which have both male and female reproductive parts. But they only feed on the ovarian fluid, meaning that the barnacle loses its ability to be female, but can still have sex as a male. Every organism invests a lot of energy into reproduction, which is what makes it such an appealing target to parasitize. But shutting down sexual systems often causes hosts to devote energy into other things, like growth, resulting in parasite-induced gigantism in a lot of these systems. On the flip side, we have sexual parasitism, which is specific to anglerfish. Anglerfish mating is weird. The male is way smaller than the female and attaches himself to her belly. He then goes on to fuse into her, degenerating into nothing more than an organ to pump sperm for the female. Much like other parasites, the male takes from the host female by receiving nutrition from her. But unlike other parasites, they do provide something in exchange: sperm for reproduction. So can we really consider male anglerfish true parasites? Well, do you consider a fetus a parasite? I mean, they're very demanding for nutrients to the point that their host, I mean mother, can be really harmed throughout the process. The answer to both of these questions is no. Neither are true parasites, because despite the harmful impacts they can have on their host, it's to the end of reproduction for the host. Hosting a fetus is how you provide nutrients towards the development of an unborn child, and sustaining an attached degenerated male anglerfish is how females get sperm to reproduce. Reproductive fitness is like the ultimate benefit in terms of natural selection. So even though individuals can be harmed by parasite-like processes, it's in exchange for having offspring, making it adaptive for the species overall. You know, in my first year of undergrad, I took this course called Food, Sex, and Death. It was an anthropology course about these three fundamental things to life and how various cultures have been built around them. We've covered parasites that steal your nutrition, parasites that ruin your ability to have sex. Now it's time for parasites that kill you. Parasitoids kill their hosts as an obligate part of their life cycle. Now, remember how I included in the definition of a parasite that they don't want to kill their hosts? That's still true. Killing your hosts give parasitoids a very different relationship with their hosts than parasites have, so they typically aren't even considered parasites. I even found some pretty reliable sources that would call them predators, but I don't think that this is accurate either. I kind of think they're like micropredators and somewhere in between, but this is another very pedantic discussion. There are hyperparasitoids, Adelphoparasitoids, ecto, endo, and all the other stuff, but there's another factor that we can consider with them that we can't consider with regular parasites. Idiobiont parasitoids prevent the development of their hosts by immobilizing them first, then laying their eggs that eventually hatch and eat them. They tend to be ectoparasitic and lay their eggs around or on top of their host, but they can lay their eggs inside them too. Coinobiont parasitoids allow their hosts to continue living and developing while they lay their eggs inside of them. That makes them all endoparasitic, because when the larvae hatch, they will eat the host alive from the inside. It turns out that most parasitoids are wasps, because of course they would be.
I'm a wasp and I like to hurt people. I don't clean nothing. I don't make honey. I don't spread too much pollen, really. I don't really do none of that.
Unlike parasites, parasitoids limit the population of their host, giving them a very different ecological value than parasites, despite the evolutionary similarities. Okay, last but not least, we are going to talk about behavior-altering parasites. I'm gonna call them zombie parasites because the infected in The Last of Us are caused by one of these. In The Last of Us, the entomopathogenic fungi cordyceps transfers from ants to humans and leads to the downfall of everything. And while this will never happen in real life, Ophiocordyceps unilaterus is still really cool. The zombie ant fungus releases spores that attach to the exoskeletons of carpenter ants. These guys live in high canopy nests in the tropical forest, and when the spores begin to yeast up, it causes the ants to convulse and fall to the forest floor. The fully infected ants are now completely zombified, and the fungus makes them climb up a plant stem and clamp on with their mandibles. They clamp onto a leaf's vein 26 centimeters above the forest floor on the northern side of the plant at a humidity level of 95% and temperatures from 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. These are the optimal conditions for the fungus's fruiting body to sprout, and the fungus intricately knows that, leading the ant to those exact conditions. On a lesser scale, behavior modification is actually really common in a lot of parasites, which is adapted to promote the parasite's reproduction. This is why animals are feral when they have rabies. The rabies makes them more likely to bite another animal and continue its spread. Some parasitoid wasps that lay their eggs on spiders induce them to build stronger webs to protect their growing larvae. Toxoplasmosis gondii makes mice attracted to cat piss in an attempt to get them killed and spread the toxoplasmosis to the cat. The cat then passes it on to us through their litter. 1 in 3 people in the world have toxoplasmosis in their brains. And while most people's immune systems are strong enough to limit the effects of this, there is evidence that shows that behavior is subtly changed when someone is infected with toxoplasmosis compared to when they are not. What influences could parasites have had on our behaviors, culture, or evolution? Less than a third of the cells in your body are human. The rest are bacteria. How many of those began as parasites long ago, then evolved into mutualists after generations of symbiosis? How has this changed the course of life? How does it change what it means to be human? Parasitism is a strategy that's been around for a long time, and there are so many kinds of it that it's hard to classify them all. You may have noticed that the way I separated parasites in this video was based on various overlapping schemes. Is the parasite inside or outside the host? What is the nature of the resource that is being parasitized? But there are more schemes that are used to classify them that I didn't even touch on in this video. How is the parasite transmitted? Is it specialized for a single species or generalized for multiple? Is it necessary that it engages in parasitism? Is it a parasite temporarily or permanently? Classification is a tool to help us. It lets us categorize and simplify things in order to better understand them and communicate about them more easily. But it often fails to truly capture the complexity of life. So if there's anything you take away from this video, I want it to be that there are endless varieties of parasites, far too many for a single video to cover. YouTube Parasite is taking over my brain and forcing me to ask you guys to like and subscribe. And check out my Patreon if you want bonus videos. Okay, thanks for watching.